Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Wolverine number 33, cover dated November 1990. And this is a really striking cover. So interesting and so daring to just simply put a hand with the extruded claws on the cover. And it is really interesting also in terms of the color scheme, just that blood red, lighter and darker shades of it, and then that hand in the foreground in a kind of a grey-brown colour. Very interesting. Of course, drawn by Marc Silvestri, inked by Dan Green. Interesting too that the signature here, for the first time as far as I can tell, they just go by their first names, Marc and Dan. That's interesting, and it made me think that these two have worked together, penciler and inker, for 4 years now at this point. And they really meshed so well together. Something else I want to point out about Dan Green's inks throughout this issue is it's all done with brush. It's most clear on this particular cover. All of the feathering lines are all done with ink brush, and there's even some dry brush effects here for the clouds in the background of this image. Yeah, so striking. And this, the image itself is something that you might get in a horror comic, a hand emerging from a grave. And it reminded me of the fact that one of Marc Silvestri's acknowledged artistic influences is Bernie Wrightson. And I think that this is a very Bernie Wrightson inspired cover. So let's open this one up to the splash page. And, we've got more kind of horror comic imagery. We've got Wolverine there, dead in a coffin, or so it appears, and the title is Grave Undertakings of this is the third part of a 3-part storyline, the finale, and the creative team is Larry Hama script, pencils Marc Silvestri, inks Dan Green, lettering Pat Brousseau, and colouring Glynis Oliver. So yeah, just the flesh colouring, those kind of greys, and is it mauve there, does give and the white as well on Logan's body, does give the implication of a corpse. And the setting is Osaka Airport, Japan. At the end of the previous issue, Logan, Tiger, and Archie Corrigan had determined to go to Japan in pursuit of Dai Kumo, Goro, and Raiko, and get some payback for the destruction of half the Princess Bar, and also for the massacre of all those spider monkeys on Madripoor. So these are customs officers, and they're looking for contraband, and all they find is this apparent corpse. And this one particular officer here referencing how mangled the corpse is as well, because Wolverine's taken quite the beating in the previous 2 issues prior to this one. Something I want to draw attention to here is just the inking in of the wood grain. I really like that by Dan Green here. Very fine brush he's probably using for inking in that wood grain. And also in terms of Silvestri's pencils, so good with the ethnic features of these Japanese custom officers, and from all different angles as well, that he's able to draw that and make them all distinctive from each other too. That is great skill on his part. And he's very much an artist who I think is capable of drawing from his mind's eye, because something I've pointed out before is that you won't get very many straight lines in this issue. My guess is that the coffin itself, the perspective on it was done by eye. And similarly with this airport background to this particular shot as well. All of the buildings here in the background done by hand, no ruler involved. Yeah. And the perspective on the plane too, my guess is that it is done by eye. The same in particular with this panel here, all done by eye. And something that Silvestri at this point, about 8 years into his career, capable of doing. Well capable of doing. And as I've said before, he's on record, he doesn't like using rulers. So here we have Tiger and Archie Corrigan, and they are what would I say, like they're play acting, or they have a ruse here where they're hoping to get the coffin and bury they're dead. So as Archie says here, cut us some slack, why don't you? You've kept us dangling here for hours, why won't you let us bury the man in peace? But that's because the customs officers have orders from the Yakuza crime boss Dai Kumo, who arrives here with Raiko on one side and Goro on the other. So Tiger recognizes him, of course, and Archie gives us the names, and for any readers who haven't read the previous two parts of the storyline, of the other two. So Dai Kumo comes up to Logan here, and he says, as he's smoking away in his cigar, so this is the great and mysterious Patch. He was a worthy foe. He sent 20 strong fighters to the Pure Land. It is a tradition among the Yakuza to show respect for valiant enemies. I want him buried in my personal plot. Goro, see to it immediately. So that's an interesting little bit of characterization there from Larry Hama regarding this Yakuza crime boss. So Goro says, my pleasure. Dai Kumo, there's nothing more satisfying than burying my own victims. So the two here protesting, but they're interrupted. Goro says, Dai Kumo has spoken. You will depart at once, or else she'll have our pet policeman arrest you. So off they go. That's a really nice shot of Tiger and Archie boarding their plane that they flew over on. He's a pilot. That's a very cool panel as well, where we're in the cockpit. We've all the little gear sticks and pieces of equipment there in the cockpit showing as well. Yeah, it's all well done. And again, no ruler involved. It's all done by eye. But I imagine that perhaps Silvestri was looking at a little bit of photo reference for the particular planes involved that he's drawing, but not using a ruler, as I say. So the coffin is carted away to be buried, and Archie says, this seemed like a perfect way to get Patch into Japan. What if that drug you gave him wears off before we can find him and dig him up? And Tiger says it's a curare derivative that induces a state of catatonia so death-like it fools doctors because of Patch's amazing resistance. He took a triple dosage. I estimate he should be out until midnight. So they fly off, and they're going to fly across the bay of Osaka to Kobe, and Tiger says that she's got some smuggling contacts there. She'll radio ahead to get us a forged landing permit in a car, and Archie says humorously, don't forget the shovels, because they're going to have to go back and dig up Logan later that night. So this is the cemetery now where he's about to be buried. And yeah, this is really interesting as well. The cultural details of the different kinds of grave markers and headstones in a Japanese cemetery versus obviously, like a European or an American Christian type cemetery. And then Raiko here puts a flower on top of the coffin before it is covered in soil, and we get this shot here of Logan waking up. And I love the inking for the different textures on this page, for the texture of the weathered headstones, for the texture of the soil there to the side of the coffin, and again the texture, but here in the dark, of the wood grain on probably the pine timbers of the coffin. Yeah, and this is a nice closing panel here as well. In effect, we've got a 9-panel grid on this particular page, with the whole of the 3 panels turned into one at the top of the page. So there's a little bit of discussion here between Goro and Raiko concerning her attitude to the burial of Logan, and he says to her, you were hoping that he would kill me back in Madripoor, weren't you? He was your last hope. He couldn't kill me because he wasn't dead yet, and I can only be slain with a blade wielded by a dead man. So we learned that in the previous issue. Now he's dead, but he's 6 feet underground. Life just isn't fair, is it, Raiko? So it was a blind seer told him that, like it's a prophecy. And we're going to see in this issue whether it turns out to be true or not. So then the scene switches to inside Dai Kumo's mansion, and we get a lot about the manufacture of the drugs here, the 2 different drugs, Zap and what's the name of the other one? Thunderbolt. yeah, that's the super drug. So one gets one addicted, the zap drug, and then the thunderbolt basically is a suicide type drug. Where, as Dai Kumo explains, where is it that he says here? He says about the drug. I think it's on the next page, but I do want to make a point in relation to this particular page before I move on, and that is once again concerning the perspective here. Again, I think that this is all done by eye rather than a grid here, and the perspective, if it is all done by eye in this particular panel, is so very well done. This, I'm pretty sure, is done by eye up here. So this is again, it's just a way of catching readers up on the whole business of the drug and its manufacture and how it's been manufactured from a secretion extracted from the brains of those spider monkeys on Madripoor that were native to Madripoor. And here again, this is interesting. We've got a shot again of the cemetery, but now at night. And this really does look like a page drawn out of a horror comic. And in particular, again, the Bernie Wrightson influence, I would argue, is evident on this particular page. So the spotting of blacks, the lighting of the three characters here who first showed up in issue 31 as well, taking the Thunderbolt drug. Those who ride the Thunderbolt feel no pain, have no fear, and are like unto dragons rising out of the east, bearing madness before them. And this kind of this is a return to the opening of the previous issue. So Wolverine in his unconscious state is hallucinating again these three foes that he faced off against at the end of the issue 31, the first part of the three-part storyline, and he's seeing them here as a monstrous three-headed dragon. And we're getting his first-person narration in terms of his attitude to all of this. I don't believe in dragons, he says. Your Thunderbolt is just another stinking drug, another blasted poison for the body and the soul. Bring on your dragons, bub. I'll slice him into sushi. So that's all things that he said in the kind of hallucinatory state that he was in when he was wounded at the beginning of the previous issue. But now we get an additional chapter to that, where he is continuing here saying, your bane is not, or sorry, rather, the dragon is saying something to him. Your bane is not the dragon, hairy barbarian. It is a man who can only die at the hands of a dead man, and you can only be saved by a woman who was once dead herself. And in the previous issue, he had in his kind of hallucinating dream unconscious state a vision of Jean, who instructed him to pull out the sword, the samurai sword that was in his chest, and he woke up. So he's remembering this in his unconscious state, and then the memory of Jean in particular arouses him from his drugged state in the coffin, and then he realizes that it was a dream, or rather a dream about a dream, the one that he had in the previous issue. And then he realizes that something's amiss. Where's Archie and Tiger? So he calls for them to let him out, and he bangs against the top of the coffin. And then I like this panel. I like the way that Silvestri has bent his nose as he's sniffing. So you get a sense of the nose tightening for the purpose of sniffing beyond the confines of the coffin. That's so well done. Such a great attention to detail. And then the switch from this particular angle, this profile angle, and then this kind of three-quarter upshot, and the eye popped open as he realizes in shock that he's buried deep underground, so obviously 6 foot under. Then he pops the claws there. That's a fantastic panel. Remember, all of this inked with a brush, and then he, in a rage, basically he'll claw himself out of the coffin and to the surface. That's a fantastic page. I love the way that Dan Green in the inks is through his hatching lines rendering the sinews and muscles of Wolverine's anatomy here, in particular on his arm and forearm. It's so well done. And also note the way that he's hatching in the hair on Wolverine's forearms as well. That's going to change in the second half of the run, where the Jim Lee influence and Scott Williams kind of very fine attention to the detail of the hairs will start to influence how those arm hairs are rendered by Silvestri and Green. But back to this particular issue and this particular story, Wolverine emerges from the soil where he's been buried. Now, this is a little bit of a continuity flub here, where how can it be that the ground that he's digging himself out of is covered in grass already? Shouldn't it be, if he was just buried there a few hours earlier, shouldn't the soil be still free of grass or any other vegetation? So that's a little continuity gaffe, I would say. So Raiko's at the grave, as we saw earlier, and now she's shocked and calls out for Kwannon, the Japanese goddess of mercy, to protect her. The dead man, he rises. Yeah, this is real. These couple of pages straight out of a horror comic. And again, that Bernie Wrightson influence evident, especially in this panel and this panel, as Logan emerges from the ground like a beast. And he says here, and I just love this laconic piece of dialogue that Larry Hama has written for him: someone is going to pay. That's so good. And we've got that blood red moon behind him, and the little detail, the little bats as well, 3 little bats, and Raiko screaming. Like I said, straight out of a horror comic. So he launches at her. This particular page I've seen online. I've seen the scan of the pencils online, and I can tell you, it's all inked with a brush. But little details of the inking is there's here, Dan Green was using some dry brush inking for the clouds here in the sky. And also here, these raindrops, it's starting to rain here. These are cut in with white paint over the inks. So yeah, it looks really, really nice, this particular page in the original art. But it looks good too with the colors. Glynis Oliver's colors really suiting the scene and the time of day, the nighttime. And I like this moment here where, as I said, like Logan launches at Raiko. Her weapon is always this umbrella handle with the blade sticking out of it, but she is overawed by him and his bestial rage, so she knows that she can't tackle Wolverine in a rage. But then he comes out of that animalistic, that bestial rage. And again, just look at Silvestri, the way that he's drawn the nose. You can see, or you can imagine the nose like moving as he's sniffing her like an animal. And then he skewers the flower that has fallen from her hair. Flower, he says, you. So he smelt also the flower that she dropped on his coffin. Yes, I left the flower. What do you want? So he gets straight to business. Where's your boss? Where's Dai Kumo? So he's in his right mind again. And payback is coming. So the mansion, we get that exterior shot of the mansion. Then there's a dinner inside, a celebratory dinner. And we get a little bit more about Thunderbolt and how it works for any readers who haven't read the previous issues. But really what Dai Kumo is looking forward to is windfall profits. And now, a fitting entertainment, he says. Open the pit. So this is interesting. This is like straight out of a James Bond type movie. So the floor opens and there are 3 tigers there. And they've been starved and abused to the edge of madness. And here comes their opponent. So the opponent is just a wolf. And this is interesting. This is kind of like a symbolic replay of the 3 dragon enemies that Logan faced in issue 31, because of course the wolf and Logan are visually similar, the Wolverine and the wolf. So they feed the wolf here a Thunderbolt tablet, and that awakens the dragon within him. So he comes roaring and growling out of the cage and destroys the 3 tigers. The mad tigers. He's ripping the tigers to pieces, and we see the blood and gore flying up here at the dinner guests. And the Doctor here is delighted. There's something primal at work here, he says. And Dai Kumo says, rapture. Perhaps it is the despair of a creature standing on the brink of the void. And Goro here, looking at his watch, thinking to himself, where's that Raiko? Why isn't she at the dinner? And look who arrives, coming in the door with the storm right behind him and his shredded shirt. And then this really, again, this dry, laconic dialogue that Larry Hama gives him, so well chosen. Excuse me for interrupting your little shindig here, but I got a bone to pick with your boss man and a couple of his pals. Just so understated. So Goro, now he knows that maybe his number is up. You're dead. I buried you. And of course there's that prophecy from the blind seer, whom he killed. That was revealed in the previous issue. So that the prophecy could never be changed. And here we have Dai Kumo. Again, just like a classic Bond villain, really. Won't somebody rid me of this nuisance? And he snaps his finger. I just love the rendering of the flesh on his face, the folds of flesh, the physiognomy, the lines and plane of the face. So well done. And again, everything inked here with an ink brush. So we have these various Yakuza goons who take out their blades and weapons, guns and swords. And one of them says he's nothing but an insignificant hairy barbarian. And Logan here drooling at the mouth, or frothing at the mouth, as he pops his claws, says, correction, I'm an insignificant hairy barbarian mutant with a mutant healing factor, adamantium lace bones, razor sharp adamantium claws, and I'm the best at what I do. So he takes on the whole group of them, and one of these guys is knocked over the table into the pit. He's worried about the wolf there. Great storytelling on these pages, so fluid, the storytelling. So the wolf is aware now that maybe there's a way out, climbs up the back of the guy, and now it's facing Wolverine. It's slathering gore from its mouth. Again, I'm just reminded of Bernie Wrightson at various points in this issue, and I'm sure that Marc Silvestri was thinking of Wrightson as he was drawing some of this, and I wondered, did he communicate that to Dan Green too, to kind of evoke that Bernie Wrightson type mood. So this is interesting. Is the wolf going to attack Wolverine? So he speaks to it and he says, where'd you come from, big fella? Put you through the ringer, did they? Hopped you up on them Thunderbolt pills, huh? That stuff can knock out the pain, zap up the old adrenaline level, and push the mean meter to redline. But it can't take away the natural instincts of a wild beast. The natural instincts that lets a critter know that he's facing one of his own. So is Wolverine thinking this? Is this his first, this is the convention, his first person narration. He doesn't say this aloud, or does he say it aloud? But then he does say this aloud at the end. So long, big boy, at least something here is smart enough to walk away from this here brouhaha. So that's interesting. And, the wolf is supposed to die within an hour from the effects of the drug, but one rather gets the sense that maybe in this case the wolf is going to survive, maybe because of its lupine physiology, I'll put it that way. But it's a nice little scene from Silvestri. Silvestri, of course, in the pencils, but in particular from Larry Hama in the script. And this is something that he will explore throughout his run. Wolverine, Logan's affinity with wild animals, and that kind of bestial communication, like where the wolf recognizes that it's Logan is top dog here, and so it slinks away. But now the Yakuza guys haven't gone away. There's still some of them left, and in particular the doctor here pulls out a pistol and shoots Logan in the shoulder. I like that switch from Logan facing this way to swinging around that way towards the doctor and the Yakuza. The doctor makes a hasty exit. These guys come forward with their samurai blades. I love these little two panels here. We have their hands raised with the samurai blades in silhouette, and then Wolverine, zash, killing them all. There they are, all in a pile on the floor. And then Glynis Oliver, it's her trope, the red background for the moment of violence. So well done. And now Wolverine, and look at the way that he's drawn here. He looks like a beast making his way with those popped claws towards the doctor on the catwalk here, and he says to the doctor, he says, "What wet rock did you crawl out from under? Nobody forces anybody to drink and drive either." He's talking about the drugs. And the doctor says, "It's not my fault if people want to take Thunderbolt. I'm not forcing them. But I still worry about them little kids in the other cars. You self-righteous fool," he says. "You followed me right out onto the catwalk just as I wanted you to." So he hits that buzzer that we saw earlier in the issue. And Wolverine, again, is just like in a James Bond movie. He's standing on just the wrong part of the catwalk, and he's dropping down into the vat of the processing chemicals there. The processing chemicals that make the Thunderbolt drug. Now, this is something that I don't know if Silvestri handled this 100% well, where it looks like he's already below the level of the catwalk, and Malheur is standing well back from the edge. So how is it that he's able to grab his leg here? Just the transition from this to this panel, I would have redone that just for the sake of making this grab of his ankle that little bit more believable. But he pulls him down into the vat of processing chemicals, and he says, "It ain't safe to go swimming alone. You should always take a buddy." That's hilarious from Larry Hama in the dialogue there. So into the vat of chemicals they go. Concentrated liquid Thunderbolt. And Goro's watching here from the shadows. He's calling out for Malheur, calling Patch out as well. And then there's activity in the vat. And Goro says, "That sound like blades scraping along the inside of the vat." Well, we know what that might mean. And out pop those claws, and all the chemicals spill out. And here's Wolverine coming out of the bottom of the vat in deep shadow. All the red as well on his body. Again, that's Glenn Oliver's trope for indicating, a moment of ferociousness about to come. But Wolverine seems to be, he's in his right mind. He says, if your pal Malheur's got a funny look in his eye, it's because he's been staring at that white light you see when all your brain cells explode. Me, I could chug-a-lug this stuff all day and I won't change a thing. I'm already as strong and as mean as I can get. So are we ready for a little one-on-one or what? Such great tough guy dialogue. So Goro talks about the prophecy. He can only be killed by a dead man. And I love the response from Wolverine. He just says here, "I don't go in for that mumbo jumbo. No matter, I can see my future in your eyes. Time to ride the Thunderbolt." And great lighting here. This kind of top-down lighting on Goro as he pops that pill. And then just this kind of like comic book way of indicating that his head is exploding from the drug. Time to take the roller coaster to the end of consciousness and fly off into oblivion. Time to die. So here he is racing at Wolverine with his blade. Wolverine, of course, with his claws popped. There's only one way that this can go, yes? Here we go. This is nice. This recalls, for me, a little bit of Frank Miller's Wolverine miniseries with Chris Claremont, the way that he did those fight scenes set in Japan, the full horizontal panels, and also how that was homaged by Paul Smith during his run on Uncanny X-Men as well. That those issues set in Japan and Wolverine's fight with Silver Samurai. But this fight between Wolverine and Goro does not take 4 or 5 pages as those fights did. He's able to dispatch Goro with just one swing of his claws. And Goro calls him back, "Come back here, finish it, fulfill the prophecy." But Wolverine says, "I told you, I don't go in for that mumbo jumbo." So he leaves him incapacitated. It's unclear whether he's killed him or whether Goro's going to bleed out or what's going to happen in that regard. But he's beaten him, he's defeated him, and he won't give him what he wants, the fulfillment of the prophecy, which would make him kind of a legend. So Wolverine comes back up to the dining room and he's looking for Dai Kumo. He wants to pay that guy back as well, but Dai Kumo's already dead. And sticking out of his chest is Raiko's umbrella blade. And she's also put a flower on the chest that she stabbed the guy through. That's so well done. And Logan thinks to himself, Raiko's umbrella sword. She was right behind me, watching out for my back. Hope she got away. Hope she finds a new life. because what happened was her father's debts were sold to Goro, so she was his unwilling aid in his crime doings, and now she's free and she's taken out Dai Kumo as well. And arriving too late are Tiger in this. It's Marc Silvestri drawn comics, so this pretty hot yellow dress that she's wearing, and Archie Corrigan. So they're late, and Logan just says, again very laconically, "About time you two showed up. I was beginning to suspect you cashed in my insurance and went to Disney World." I don't know, that's just hilarious. I like that. And now we're at the end. Last page. So the 3-part storyline has come to a conclusion. They're flying back to Madripoor here. And Wolverine is just thinking, like Tiger asks him, "What do you think? You're not listening, something on your mind." He says, "Just thinking about being trapped in a bad situation and not being able to get out." So is he talking about like being stuck in the coffin 6 feet under? No, he's thinking about Raiko. "Not everybody gets stuck," says Tiger. "Sometimes somebody gets out." "They do, darling, that they do." And there she is, like watching them as the plane flies off to Madripoor. So yeah, that's a really excellent 3-part storyline that introduces the new creative team of Silvestri and Larry Hama, and it's calling back to the first 10 issues of the series when it was written by Claremont and drawn by Buscema. And Buscema, of course, infamously expressed that he didn't like drawing superheroes, and so when he came to draw Wolverine, Claremont obliged and basically set the stories that he gave Buscema to draw in the civilian world, so to speak. And we've returned to all of that with these first 3 issues by Silvestri and Hama. No costumes in sight. It's like a noir, down and dirty, hard-boiled crime story that they've given themselves to tell and draw for their first 3 issues, and I think it's worked very, very well. Some letters here about issue 26 of Wolverine, and 28 as well, but we still haven't caught up to letter writers talking about Silvestri and Hama's first issue. That will be coming soon. There you go. I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Wolverine number 33. Let me know your thoughts about the issue itself, about the art, about the writing in the comments to the video. If you enjoyed my commentary and review, please like the video on YouTube. It really helps the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.